we interrupt our regularly scheduled programming for this Channel 11 News special report. From Channel 11 News, WPXI TV Pittsburgh, the station with more news more often. Flying into the future, Pittsburgh's new international airport. Reported by Channel 11 News anchor David Johnson.
Well, here it is, Pittsburgh's new international airport.
Remember this sky? Maybe not. That flight into the future was a long time ago. But surely you know this guy.
And now to a Channel 11 News exclusive.
Turns out David Johnson, who is now flying off into his own new future after 40 years at Channel 11, lasted longer as a Pittsburgh fixture than that airport terminal, which will shutter soon after 33 years. And I'm the lucky girl who's been along for the whole ride. I said yes to David's marriage proposal in the spring of 1985. Just a few months after he moved to Pittsburgh to work for WPXI. I want to take you back now through moments in David's professional life, from the sublime to the ridiculous. And believe me, there's been a lot of ridiculous. But first, a tiny bit of background. David was born and raised in Florida, and like most children of the 50s, he and his sister grew up in a home with one large television set taking center stage in the living room. You might think a career in TV news called out to him at an early age. He was certainly rocking that Anchorman sports jacket look pretty young. But no, that calling came later. David's mom was a teacher and his dad was a meteorologist. So education, science, and learning were paramount in his home, and he was an excellent student. When he headed off to the University of Florida, his plan was to become a teacher. But then his best friend Phil suggested that David would make a pretty darn good TV newscaster. Good call. Changing majors added another year to David's UF experience, which only deepened his already rabid passion for all things Gators. Did you ever see his desk at work? In 1980, after celebrating his new broadcasting degree, David hit the job market. Telemundo didn't exist yet as an option, but a news director in Chattanooga said, "Shave the mustache and I'll hire you." David did, and in Tennessee, he honed his skills as a reporter until he was tapped to fill in for a sports director who suddenly moved on.
Okay, much, got that word right, of the dust has settled now in the NFL playoff picture, but we still don't know who is going to play who or whom, whatever the case may be, but we do have highlights of
Yes. David would later recall that experience as a guest on John McIntyre's Night Talk.
They actually offered me the job full-time, said if you want to do this, you can have it.
Now, why didn't you do that? You could have had a big, I know you're a big sports fan and somewhat of a sports fanatic, and you probably could have had a very successful career in that as well. Why did you choose news instead of sports?
I consulted a former news director in Jacksonville, who was a news director when I was an intern. And I said, I've got an offer to do, I actually got an offer at a Cox-owned station. We're, of course, owned by Cox here in Pittsburgh, in Charlotte, North Carolina, 30th largest market, at about the same time I was doing this, and I turned that down.
Interesting side note here. I was working at a Charlotte TV station at that time, met the guy who did take that sports job, and dated him a few times.
The news director said, I can't believe you're turning this down. You're 23, you're going to make $17,000 a year. You know, you're the luckiest guy in the world. What are you, an idiot? And I said, well, I'm an idiot, but yeah. I got to where I preferred news.
So off David went to what's known as the Space Coast of Florida, covering news for the Brevard County Bureau of Orlando's WESH.
Our David Johnson is standing by live at the Kennedy Space Center. David?
Carol, NASA first got ahead of schedule on this mission with work being done in the Orbiter Processing Facility, which is the shuttle's special hangar.
He has loved all things space-related ever since. Then it was on to Atlanta and the Cox-owned WSB, where David's work as a reporter took him on a wide variety of assignments and into my life, after I also took a job at what was known as White Columns. We were pretty much madly in love from the start. So when, out of the blue, an invitation came to audition for an anchor job in Pittsburgh, he said no thanks 3 different times over the course of several months. But I knew David would make a great anchor and ultimately urged him to check Pittsburgh out. Thinking there would only be a 3-year contract involved and envisioning the Steel City, I naively asked, how bad could it be? Turns out the question should have been, does it get any better than this?
You're watching Channel 11, WPXI TV, Pittsburgh. This is Channel 11 News with David Johnson, Marissa Morris, and Bill Cardill with the weather outside. Now, Channel 11 News.
Good afternoon.
There was David anchoring at noon and reporting in the evening with unique opportunities to get out and discover Pittsburgh. He had always loved being out in the field, and his live reports had energy and immediacy.
This scene is being played out all up and down Ouija Creek, which is
just a few minutes. There's going to be entertainment. You can buy ethnic gifts upstairs, but you're right, the main thing is food here. People come here for the food. We're at the Scandinavian booth, and I want to try out dessert first. Can you offer me some suggestions?
David loved adding humor whenever possible.
All right, if you're a good-looking man or a good-looking woman, listen up. You're all listening, I know.
But it was no laughing matter when, just 2 years into his tenure at Channel 11, David had to deliver a disclaimer unlike any before, after State Treasurer Bud Dwyer committed suicide at a press conference.
We warn you, you are about to see the video of the actual incident. Of course, we don't have to say this, though we will. It's extremely violent. In other words, we're about to show you folks a man who put a gun to his mouth and pulled the trigger.
That little episode made it into the annals of television history. There were other moments on Channel 11 that made it into the annals of Johnson family history. 2 of them occurred during the annual Muscular Dystrophy Association telethons, when our sons each made their live debuts on WPXI.
think about them because I'm thinking he sees me on TV. He said, "Daddy."
And David Johnson's got a special guest over there with him now. Does that person bear some resemblance to you, Mr. Johnson?
A little bit. Let go of the microphone, boy. It's my job. You'll have your day. Don't worry about it.
Here's the latest on what...
Telethons aside, David was hired to help move the needle on the ratings for Channel 11 News, which were initially described to us as 4th place in a market with 3 news stations. On the noon news, he was up against KDKA's father-daughter news team, Bill and Patty Burns, a dominant force locally known as Patty and Daddy. It was big news in the Johnson household when WPXI pulled into 2nd place with a whopping 9% share of the noon audience compared to Patty and Daddy's 59%. In 1989, David was promoted to the evening anchor chair, and in 1990, the magic began when Channel 11 hired Peggy Finnegan to sit beside him.
This is Channel 11 News Night Beat.
Oh, a day of traffic headache.
Channel 11 promoted its new anchor team wherever it could, on billboards, in its own magazine, on holiday cards, and even birthday cards that went out to viewers. David and Peggy hosted Christmas parades and 4th of July celebrations. And to appreciate the laughs David and I shared over one unusual means of marketing, I have to take you back for a moment to WSB in Atlanta. There, the station promoted its reporters by inserting their photos into print ads for television sold at Rich's department store. David was so tickled by this that he had one of those ads mounted for display. Well, look what happened when Channel 11 did the same thing with Peggy and David. My hubby was done in by the picture-in-picture feature, but he got his payback when a later ad highlighted this lovely Oak Entertainment Center. All that publicity worked. Viewers throughout the region got to know and like David and Peggy, and the ratings reflected that. So did their longevity as an anchor team. It was big news when they hit 20 years together. At the 25-year mark, they sat down to reflect with WQED's Michael Bartley.
But we had a lot of success. We had a lot of fun. We really genuinely liked each other.
The 2 friends worked together until Peggy's retirement in 2020, their 31-year partnership making them the longest-running anchor team in Pittsburgh television history. And now it appears that David holds the mantle of longest-running TV news anchor this town has ever known. What a ride it has been. There were the monumentally tragic stories.
There's been a crash of a 767 aircraft 8 miles east of Jennerstown in Somerset County. This is just off of Route 30.
What appears to be a mass shooting at a major house of worship in Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh, Tree of Life.
And on the joyous end of the spectrum, David's favorite story of all from the Q Creek mine.
It's a great story to report on and to report the good news that we had from inside with the governor. They busted through. They
They've got all 9 miners alive, and now that they've pulled one out, and they progress from there.
There were numerous special reports on a variety of topics, and there were live town meetings, like this one about crack cocaine, hosted by David, Peggy, and Tom Brokaw. I was so proud of the way my husband stepped up to respond to a frustrated audience member.
You're right, sir. We shouldn't show all the negative and none of the positive. That was our mistake in not showing that. We should have shown it. It was a newsworthy event. It should have been covered. In retrospect, though, I think we should have seen some white users and dealers as well.
David was comfortable talking with presidents.
Do you regret making that statement?
And equally at ease getting down on the floor to talk to a child with AIDS. He relished the opportunity to meet and work with famous folks, but he was just as enthusiastic about taking a pack of Cub Scouts on a tour of the station. David has emceed too many fundraising events to recall, but he'll never forget raising money for the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank by appearing on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire with Peggy.
You have $65,600 in your bank. That is now your money to take back to Pittsburgh for the food bank, if you so choose. Next question is worth $100,000. If you were to miss it, you would go down to $25,000. Pressure's on, guys.
I'm going to let this play out in real time for you.
In accordance with his wishes, in 2008, Frederick Bauer's ashes were buried in what iconic container which he invented? Cup of Noodles cup, Pringles can, Cracker Jack box, Mrs. Butterworth's bottle. It's the kind of thing that you might have reported on in the news. Is it Kicker or something?
We only do hard news.
Oh.
No kickers. It would have helped.
A lot right now.
Yes. Well, Cracker Jack box is so iconic. Don't you think?
It is.
Much more than Cup of Noodles, which is more recent, and, you know, maybe Mrs. Butterworth's.
In other words, how iconic is a Pringles can?
Exactly.
A little bit. Mrs. Butterworth's, because it's the shape of Mrs. Butterworth. It makes it somewhat iconic.
I think it's C, and now we have to strategize. We could ask the audience.
Right.
I don't know if the audience would know this one. But if we miss it, we still keep
$25,000.
Oh my,
Audience?
this is tough. You know, since it was probably a news story, yes, maybe we should ask the audience.
Ask the audience. Poll the
See what
audience.
they think.
Okay. Audience, Peggy and David need your help. And your keypads, vote now. %, say Pringles can, 40% say Cracker Jack box.
Oh, no.
Down from there, that is... You could have influenced people by saying Cracker Jack box.
I'm going to throw this out for your consideration. Audience not helping a great deal. Not that that's for your consideration, Peggy.
Yes.
But is to question what our original thought, is a box.
A container.
An iconic container. Those little cardboard boxes had been around before. It just had the Cracker Jack label on the outside with a toy on the inside. And a Pringles can was the first of. There were no potato chips in cans before that. I'm leaning toward B and the 2% of the audience.
I mean, we need to guess now. So if you feel strongly,
you don't need. Just so you know, you do not need to guess. You can leave with $65,600. But if you feel strongly and you want to go for it, I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm just reminding
thank you for reminding me of that. I do think Cracker Jack box is iconic. However, because the Pringles can was very novel at the time,
Cracker Jack is iconic. The container isn't necessarily iconic. Pringles can, I think,
David,
supersedes.
If you feel strongly, I trust your gut.
Okay.
And I'll just kill you later. So I will.
Okay.
No, I'm teasing.
You ready?
I am
You're
ready.
allowing me to do this?
I am.
B, Pringles can. Final answer.
No way that you're leaving anytime soon. It's $100,000.
has a zest for life and a quirky sense of humor that I just love. In our basement, we have an organizer of little plastic drawers for storing small things, and each drawer is labeled by its contents. Shortly after David was tapped for the main anchor position, this is what I found when I went down to get some screws and wall anchors. The station provided its news team with autograph cards to use when necessary. One day, David came home with revised versions of his card that featured Lancaster County Dave, Carmine Johnson, and Rabbi David Ben Johnson. David had his accomplices. Once during a John Fedko sports report, Dr. Freddie Fu noted that David had had the same ankle surgery that Steeler Barry Foster had just undergone.
Now, Foster needed surgery because he couldn't cut to his left. David will now demonstrate that after surgery, Barry will indeed be able to cut to his left. Let's look at our exclusive Channel 11 slow-mo replay. Look at the footwork of David's left ankle as he makes the cut.
There was the Times sports director Sam Nova reported on a baseball game that was a throwback to 1917.
Wouldn't it be great if we could turn back the entire world to 1917, especially when it comes to items that cost money?
The world was at war in 1917.
Thank you.
And when Jack Etzel did a man-on-the-street piece about who people are told they resemble, David came out of that report asking the same question of Peggy.
People say you look like...
Audrey Meadows, Pamela Sue Martin, or Deborah Norville. I don't think I look like any of them. How about you?
When I was growing up, some very nice elderly ladies said I looked like Tyrone Power.
Oh.
At the time, I said to my father, who is Tyrone? I since have found, I don't think.
That is a very nice compliment. That's our news for now. Thank you for joining us.
Our next news in 1/2 hour on your 24-hour news source. Have a good night. From Deborah and Tyrone, we'll see you.
None of this is to diminish David's skills as a serious journalist. He's got a wall full of awards to prove it, a few Emmys as well, and in 2016 he was named Pennsylvania Broadcaster of the Year. But the most meaningful recognition came when Kennywood Park potato-fied him in conjunction with the opening of the theme park's new Potato Patch ride. They nailed him from the top of his gray hair down to his Converse shoes. There are things I'll fondly remember about David's on-air career that have nothing to do with the news of the day, like his singing.
Little town, it's a quiet village, every day like the one before. Little town full of little people, waking up to say, bonjour, 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 bonjour.
And there were a few good impressions.
Good evening, I'm Tom Brokaw, NBC Nightly News. I've just been sued by Richard Jewell down in Atlanta, and we have an update on Jeff Gillooly and the Tonya Harding case.
By the way, that appearance on Night Talk had a few extra bonus memories for me.
We have a call from Wesley. Wesley, go ahead.
Yeah, how you guys doing?
Fine. How are you?
Okay, listen, before I ask the question, Dave, I have to say, John could have that MTV blow-up doll. I tell you, your wife Nancy is so gorgeous, man. She is so classy.
Mine.
Yeah.
Well,
thank
you mean I can have Jenny McCarthy?
Yeah, you can have her, man. Okay.
Wow, you're talking my wife Nancy Polinsky. Who's on channel 13 and 16.
Yes, but she has so much class, man.
I agree.
I didn't catch the name, but go ahead. You're on Night Talk for David Johnson.
Hi, this is Nancy calling from Squirrel Hill.
Hey.
Would that be Nancy?
That's a hot-looking babe, I bet.
Listen, I think we need to hear more from Wesley.
This is David's wife, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. Mrs.
Why? Why, Nancy?
That Wesley sounded like a guy who really was on top of things.
Oh, no question. He's got it down. He knows exactly what the score is.
Nancy,
you're the best, honey. I love you.
David and I actually appeared on the air together more than a few times. We hosted several WQED specials, and he was a guest on one of the earliest cooking shows I co-hosted with Chris Fenimore.
Here he is, my husband, David Johnson.
Hi, honey, I'm home. By the way, who's this man in our kitchen?
David, who just doesn't cook, made his favorite peanut butter and banana sandwich.
And notice how the banana adheres to the peanut butter. It's a perfect match.
And then there was this memorable Night Talk episode on Valentine's Day.
David Johnson and Nancy Johnson are here. They are the Johnsons. And they are an incredibly successful couple in terms of, if you stay together for a long time and you actually still like each other, I would think that's a big success.
David says we're going to fake it through this segment.
Well, that's why, he's got that winning anchorman smile and he knows how to fake it.
It is fake.
When necessary. No, the smile isn't fake.
By the way, I am so romantic that I forgot to get her anything this morning on Valentine's Day. She got me a card at least. We don't give tons of gifts to each other.
Right.
But in honor of this show, the $4 giant eagle,
Wow.
single rose. My dear.
For this, he expects me to put on some lingerie when he gets home tonight.
Fat chance, Buster.
Well, I was hoping.
What does it
Thank
take?
you, dear.
That was 25 years ago, when we thought David hitting the 15-year mark at Channel 11 was a big deal. Now, so many newscasts later, with 40 years behind him in Pittsburgh, David has signed off. When his plans to retire were announced, a flood of cards and notes came in by mail, and countless good wishes were posted online. Meta AI summed it all up by saying, viewers and colleagues praised David Johnson's retirement announcement, thanking him for his dedication and professionalism. Many share personal anecdotes. One of those anecdotes read, I peed next to him once at Meat and Potatoes downtown. Good dude, just stared forward the whole time. Excellent bathroom etiquette.
The Council of the City of Pittsburgh does hereby declare Tuesday, December 10th, 2024, to be David Johnson Day in the City of Pittsburgh.
David had his day, and friends from Channel 11 showed up for it and celebrated back at the station.
Well, these are up all over the newsroom.
They were, even recognizing his excellent bathroom etiquette. But David Johnson Day is over. With much fanfare, the curtain has come down on my husband's legendary career at Channel 11, and boxes of Gator paraphernalia from David's desk have made their way to our house. Besides cheering on the Gators, David's days will now be focused mainly on family. He's nuts for his 2 granddaughters and excited about the baby on the way, so trips overseas to visit them are high on his priority list. As David prepares to soar into retirement, it seems only fitting to return to the airport for one final sign-off from the past.
This concludes our Channel 11 News Special Report. I'm David Johnson. For all of us at Channel 11 News, we thank you for joining us.
No, David Johnson, we thank you for being there for us all these years.